Hi, and good morning, everybody. For me, it's morning. Good evening to you in the Middle East. My name is Dr. Tamar Andrews, and I'll be joining you today and for a few more Sundays for sessions on parenting during the pandemic. I'm going to share my screen now. And just a few little housekeeping rules, if you will. That number one, I want to make sure that everybody understands. Let me just stop this for a second. I want to make sure everybody understands I am going to go through my PowerPoint and my presentation. It'll probably take me about 20 to 30 minutes. And once I'm done, I will then be able to open up the chat box and take all of your questions. So as I'm talking, if you have any questions and you're worried that you might forget them, just start typing your questions into the chat box as they come to mind. And then once I've finished my presentation, I will make sure that we have enough time to answer as many questions as possible. I just want to make sure that I have enough time to get through with this, as I want to make sure that we are going to cover all of the things that I wanted to cover today. So I am going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. There we go. And you should be able to see the slides right now. I'm going to keep it in this view only so that I can see what's coming up next. It'll just be easier for me. But you should be able to see this. You'll also see that I have my email address as well as my telephone number. You are more than welcome to keep my information. And at any time, if you have a question during the week, or something pops into your head and you'd like to ask me a question, feel free, and you are more than welcome to do so. Okay, so let's see if I can get this going. All right, so first I want to just start by saying that we are all raising children. I myself am the mother of 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren. I know, I look like I'm 20, I wish. But when we wake up in the morning, we all wake up hoping that we are going to be the best parents that we can possibly be. The problem is that it's kind of like you know how to drive a car, but in order to be a parent, you have to know how to drive a rocket ship. Their brains are completely different than those of the adult brain. And today I really want to point those things out to you so that you'll better be able to understand what your child needs from you. Every human being is born with 100 billion brain cells, actually. And every single brain cell can make anywhere from 1 to 12,000 connections. I want you to think about that for a minute, so that every time you talk, or your child feels something, hears something, touches something, tastes something, every time you give that child a hug, and you tell them how special they are, even if they're a newborn and they don't understand the words, they still sense what your intention is, because a newborn is a completely sensory being. They only know how to understand their world from the senses that they feel. That's why a newborn first learns how to connect with their mother by nursing. They also learn how to connect with their family and their loved ones by being held and comforted. And many times you'll notice that a newborn will cry and you start complaining, going, I don't even know why my child's crying. They're fed, they're diapered. What they really just want is human connection. I also want to make sure that you understand that until a child is 2 years old, you cannot spoil the child. So we don't really try to discipline or yell or try to teach something to a child through negative connotations unless they are over 2 years old, because it is at that point that the child will actually then start to learn. Right now they are just sensory beings and they learn to trust the world. The first stage of development is actually called trust versus mistrust. And what that means is that as a child comes into the world, they either learn to trust that when I'm hungry, you're going to feed me. And when I'm cold, you're going to comfort me. And when I'm scared, you're going to hold me. And when I just need some love, you're going to love me. And if they don't have those initial needs met right away and on a consistent and persistent basis, they actually then learn to mistrust the world. As a matter of fact, if you remember, for those of you that are as old as I am, maybe 20 and older, there was a great study done in Romania, I think it was in the 80s, when Ceausescu was no longer in power, and they went to go see the orphanages in Romania. And the kids, the one thing that was so weird, so strange, was that the children were not crying. And the reason they weren't crying, they found out, was because when they would cry, because there wasn't enough staff in the orphanages, there weren't people to come meet those needs of the children when they were infants. And as a result, they learned that crying didn't get me anything. So instead, what they learned to do was bang their heads or simply sit in their filth. And when they were finally adopted, after Ceausescu left power, these children never bonded with their caregivers. So even if you were a loving, nurturing, warm parent, and you gave that child all the love you could possibly give another human being, because they didn't learn that first stage of trust between 0 and 1 year old, those children never learned to trust another human being. And in fact, if you see adults now who have inappropriate trusting relationships, meaning that they're always questioning whether or not someone is telling the truth or whether or not someone's actually going to be there for them, I can probably guarantee that they were a child who at their earliest years of development did not have adult caregivers who met their needs. So that's where we put these two together. You cannot spoil a child until they are 2 years old, and you cannot give them enough love and warmth, because this is where they learn to trust other human beings. So now, let's see, my slide is, oh, here, let me go to the next slide. So I want to show you another picture of the brain. This is actually slices of neurons. Neurons are brain cells. And I want you to see right here, if you can see my mouse, just a few weeks after a child is born, you'll see that these brain cells have very, very few connections. And as they become, once they're born, this is, the first slide actually is gestation. The second slide is when they're a newborn. Look at a child at 3 months. Again, not a lot of neuronal connections, and that's because they just don't have the wiring yet to connect. But now I want you to look at 6 months. Look at the difference in how many brain cells have connected between 3 months and 6 months. And now look at 2 years. 2 years is huge. This is the foundation of the entire lifetime of the child. Happens between birth and 2 years. Now the next thing I want you to see is what happens at 4 years. Notice how at 4 years old, the connections seem to be fewer. And the reason for that is because once the brain decides that I don't need a certain cell, a certain brain cell, I get rid of it through an act called synaptic pruning. Whoa, this is a lot to take in, isn't it? So we have all of these brain cells, millions and millions and millions of brain cells. They're all trying to wire together. But think about how you would drive from your house to wherever it is that you're going to visit your friends. Hopefully there's more than one road, right? And so think of each road as a connection between the brain cells. What would happen if there's a road that you know you never want to take? It's got too many bumps and rocks and it'll destroy my car, and there's potholes. I'm never going to take that road to get to my friend's house. You simply lose that road. So in the brain, it's the same thing. If my brain sees during the first 4 years of development, that there are certain brain cells my brain is never going to use. I get rid of them because my brain likes to keep a very tidy house. It likes to keep things very clean. So for example, and for those of you that have not yet watched my YouTube series, you might want to watch one. It's called Are You Getting Dumber? And the reason is because, let's just say, you're always making Mediterranean food. And sometimes you cook Italian food. And once in a while you go out to dinner and you have French food, but you never have Chinese food, right? Your brain will get rid of the brain cells that would have connected to Chinese food. Or put another way, let's say you're never exposed to classical music, although the music that was playing before my lecture was actually quite lovely. If you're never exposed to something, your brain will get rid of it. So as a parent, what this means, let's talk about it in a few different ways. If we're going to talk about love, I need to show my child love and affection in many different ways, or they will never grow to understand or realize that. So I need to show them love in my words. I need to show them love in the ways that I hold and caress them. I need to show them love in the things that I do for them. I need to show them love by, you're going to get that shot at the doctor's because I love you and I want to take care of you. They might yell and scream now, but when they're older, they will realize that everything you did was an expression of love. And so it's very important then that as they are developing, we show them different ways to develop. So we take them outside to play. We play with them inside. We play with them stacking blocks going up, and we play with them with colors and crayons going laterally. Everything that they do will connect brain cells together. The other thing I also want you to see, I know that many people use the words working memory or short-term memory and long-term memory. I want to give you a set of different terms to use instead. I like to use, I call it chemical memory and structural memory. Chemical memory is right now. You're listening to me talk and your brain cells are firing, but they're only firing as long as the chemicals in the brain last. Because when those brain cells talk to each other, they release a certain chemical. What you're looking on the screen right now, though, is you are looking at structural memory. You are looking at reinforcement that took place strong enough and consistently and persistently to actually change the structure of this child's brain. Everything you say, everything you do is going to contribute to the structural memory, the structure, the actual physical structure of your child's brain. I also want you to recognize that if there's a lot of yelling and screaming, hitting, abuse, trauma, anxiety, stress, it might not even be directed towards the child. It might be directed to somebody else. Those things will also contribute to another kind of structural memory. And so in essence, you, the parents, are the architects of this child's brain. You are the ones that are actually going to create the brain that the child will walk around with for the rest of their life. So the question is, what kind of brain do we want them to have? So let's understand who they are. This is your 1-year-old. They love to play peekaboo. Why? Why is it that when you play peekaboo, they will play as long as you play? They don't get bored. And the reason for that is because this child does not yet have object permanence. What does that mean? I'm going to show you. So I'm going to take off my glasses because I don't want to knock them off. Watch. Oh my gosh! Where did my workshop go? Where did all the people go? Oh, there you are. Wait, they're gone again. I don't see them. They're gone. Oh, there you are. Every time that child doesn't see something, to that child, it disappears from the world because they don't have object permanence. They don't know that if an object disappears, even if I'm closing my own eyes, that that object still exists in the world. That's why until this is completely gone, children get very stressed when their parents walk out of the room or go somewhere, because I don't know that my parent will ever come back. I cannot yet understand that something can exist even if I don't see it. They also love listening to stories and learning new words. Now, I do have to warn you, though, there is a concept called fast mapping. Fast mapping is a child's ability to hear a word once in context and say that word again in context, even if they don't understand the word. For example, mommy or daddy are driving, and Krishna, I see that you're raising your hand. If you don't mind, I'm going to hold off. Let me just finish this topic, and I'll stop in a minute. So mommy or daddy are driving, and somebody goes right in front of the car, and daddy yells, "Oh, hell," because he's stressed. Now, the child at 1 year old does not necessarily know what the word hell means, right? I don't think so. And yet when the child falls down and hurts themselves and they're stressed, they yell, "Oh, hell," not knowing what the word means. And I could use much worse words, but it's important to remember that this child actually might be able to hear and understand how to use the words, even if they don't understand what the words mean. The other thing I just want to make sure you understand is that this next stage is called autonomy versus shame and doubt. Notice how this little boy here in the picture is playing with a toy. Now, sometimes these children are getting it wrong, and we want to show them what to do in order to get the toy or the puzzle correct. But one of the first things most children in any language learn how to say is, "Me do it, me, 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 me." And the reason for that is because they need to learn how to do things on their own. We all want to be independent, autonomous individuals. And if we keep trying to fix it for them without allowing them to struggle, they end up being doubtful of their own ability, and they end up being children who might be a little too fearful or shamed into trying new things because they might get it wrong, or I can't do anything unless my parents or somebody bigger than me does it for me. I'm going to stop for a second because I see a lot of hands going up, and I just want to see, let's see. I don't see questions in the chat, but I do see hands going up, so I don't really know what that means. I apologize, and I don't know if you can actually unmute yourselves, but please do me a favor and put your questions into the chat box. Just type in your questions, or wait until I'm done with the presentation. I'm going to start my slideshow again, and then I'll be more than happy to answer any of the questions. Okay? All right, because I got to figure out how they've structured this as well. Okay, now you have your 2-year-old. So your 2-year-olds are now going into a stage where some people call it the terrible twos. And I like to think of it as the terrific twos, because this is where your child's personality really comes out. This is where you can now tell your child to do something. And if they don't do it, this is where we start to discipline them and teach them how it means to be a member of this household, a member of our community, a member of our faith, a member of a preschool class, and a member of the world. So this is where they're going to try really hard to do things on their own, but they also start throwing temper tantrums and yelling and screaming. So about temper tantrums, there are 2 different kinds of temper tantrums, and you have to understand which one they're having in order to know what to do. So there's an upstairs, I call it an upstairs temper tantrum, and a downstairs temper tantrum. And what I mean by that is that there are temper tantrums that happen here in the limbic system, which is your emotional brain. And those temper tantrums happen when I'm tired and I'm hungry and I just can't stop what I'm yelling about. And those are the temper tantrums that nothing is going to be able to fix because they're in an emotional upheaval and they're screaming and yelling. Then there are the temper tantrums, which are, I want mommy's lipstick. And if I don't get mommy's lipstick, I'm gonna scream. But as soon as they get the lipstick, they stop screaming. Oh, those are the temper tantrums we absolutely have to ignore. And the reason why we have to ignore those is because if you keep getting into those over and over and over, you are going to have a child who will learn that they always have to throw a temper tantrum in order to get what they want. And it works for me. And if it doesn't work today, I'll just scream louder next time and louder next time and louder next time. So we need to stop those right away in order for the child to learn that temper tantrums aren't going to get me what I want. However, here's the other thing you need to remember. Remember what I showed you before the slides with the brain cells all wired together? They also don't have a great memory yet because those brain cells are not fully connected yet. And it's good and bad. It's good because if you do something inappropriate or yell at your child, they'll still come back and hug you and love you an hour later. It's bad because you're going to have to learn that you need to repeat yourself 5,000 times. It's going to take a lifetime. As a matter of fact, my husband's not here, but I still have to remind him sometimes to do the things around the house because let's face it, we all have lapses in memory. Make sure though that when your child does not remember to do something, that your discipline is appropriate and positive. We're not going to go over discipline techniques today, but if you join me on another Sunday, I do have one where we're going to talk about routines and consistency and discipline, and I'll give you some really great techniques on how to do this in a more productive way where you'll still love being a parent, even though you're in the midst of disciplining. But just remember that boundaries and consistency are important. So for example, if you keep telling your child, no, 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 you can't have my lipstick, no, no, and then you give in, there is no boundary or consistency. And I want to give you an example of something. I live in California, and for those of you who don't know, we have earthquakes all the time. Now, when I'm in my house has been retrofitted, so I know that unless it's a huge 9.5 earthquake, I am pretty safe in my house. Now, if there was an earthquake or a fire and you needed to leave, the first place that you'd probably try to leave through is the front door. If the door was blocked and I couldn't get out the door, I would get out the window. It requires a little bit more effort, but I'll get out the window. But if you can see these walls on either side, I would not try to get out through the walls. Those are made out of brick and I will not get through. That's what being a parent has to be like. There are going to be some times that you can just walk right over me and go through the front door. That's when you know I've got a soft spot for something, or we're tickling and we're having a good time, and you can kind of do whatever you want. Those are your decisions to make. There are some times where I'm more like the window. I'm gonna say no, but okay, I'm tired and it's been a long day and I said no once, but I think I'm gonna give in and I will give in to you. But there are some things where you have to be the block walls, and it cannot be that your child will ever step over you and get through those block walls. And it's important that your child knows by the way your face looks, by the tone of voice that I use, and by my whole demeanor that I am a block wall right now. Sometimes though, if I say, well, this is daddy's water bottle, but okay, I hear mommy's a window right now. If I push hard enough, I'm gonna be able to walk over that. So it's important that your child learns how to identify what their stand is with you at that time and be consistent in that. So don't say, no, you cannot have daddy's water bottle, and then all of a sudden give it to them. There is no consistency here. And actually, believe it or not, this is true. Your child will never feel safe with you if you always are wishy-washy in how you respond to your child's demands. So it's really important that you do that. And I see Sana's question. It's a great question. I'm going to get to that when I'm done, but I got to answer that question. It's a great one. The next thing I want to point out about how your child's brain works, and I'm just going to go for a few more minutes and then take questions because I want to make sure I don't run out of time for your questions. Conservation issues. Now, this is really, really important. So pay attention. See this little girl? She's sitting in a bathtub. The water is going from the faucet. And many of you might have experienced this where your child sits with a cup in front of the running water in the bathtub and you're not allowed to turn it off. Why? Because to your child, they can only see one thing at a time. All they see is the water going in. They don't see the water coming out of the cup. That is called a lack of conservation. Your child can only see one thing at a time. Another example, if you look at the picture, I've put 4 yellow blocks. The 4 blocks in the middle and the 4 blocks that are on each corner. If you were to ask a child who lacks conservation, and it's conservation of thought, not conservation like ecology, which one has more? The child will almost always say the one where the blocks are on the corners. Why? Because it takes up more space. For those of you that have more than one young child at home, this is very important. Why? Because if you give the child a cracker and the sibling wants a cracker, but it breaks in half, both children might cry. Why? The one who has it broken in half will think that they have less because it's 2 small ones. The child who has one big one might cry because they only see that they have 1 and the other child has 2. Even if you try to show them the crackers came from 1 piece and broke apart, they can't see 2 things at once. They can only see one aspect of something at a time. It's important to understand this because sometimes we give our children what we think is the same thing, but the children don't perceive it as being the same. So just know that their brains don't work the same as ours do. And that when you're dealing with young children, it's important to know that they don't have the same ideas that we do. I'm going to stop now and not do 3-year-olds. I want to make sure I do the questions that you've all asked in the chat. Hold on, let me get to the chat. Okay, so first of all, my 2-year-old wants to do everything on her own. Yes. Atika, that's exactly right. And that's exactly what they should be doing. That's the stage of development where they learn to be an independent person. If it's a 2-year-old who wants to tie their shoes or eat their food or go into the bathtub or wash their own body, celebrate that. And make sure that you also pick your own battles. So for example, if your 2-year-old every single day has been bathed and you know they're clean. And today they get into the bathtub and they want to do the soap completely on their own. Give them a little bit of soap and let them wash their body. And if they don't want you to do it at all, leave it at that. Show them that you trusted them enough to wash their own body because what you're doing right now is more important. So I want you to think about the short-term loss, but the very long-term goal or long-term gain. The short-term loss is you didn't get to wash your child the way you wanted to. But the long-term gain is that you are now fostering an independent human being. And that feeling of, oh my gosh, my mom let me wash myself today and I did it and she loved what I did and she was happy with it. Remember that slide where I showed you structural memory, where you've now changed the structure of the brain? You have now made your child feel so good about trying something and doing it on their own. They won't remember how they wash their body. I promise when they get older, they'll wash their bodies really well. But what they will remember is that feeling you gave them of success and of confidence, and you have kind of rebuilt the brain. So that's a great question. The other one that I also want to attend to is from Sana. How do we handle temper tantrums in the presence of extended family members? One of the questions I get asked a lot, especially by parents of girls, but it can also be boys, is every time we go to extended family, the expectation is that my child hugs and kisses all of the aunts and uncles and grandparents as a sign of respect. But at the same time, we don't want to teach our children that when they grow up, anybody can just touch their bodies and do whatever they want to them. And so it's a problem. It's also a problem when they're at grandma's house or grandparents' house, or you're in the middle of a family celebration and the child is throwing a temper tantrum because they didn't like the way the chicken was put on the plate. You have several options here, and it's going to have to depend on the way in which your family handles certain elements of respect, etc. So the first one you can do is you can always say, I'm working with Dr. Tamar Andrews to teach my child how not to throw temper tantrums. So if you will simply indulge me, I need to take her outside. And I know it's hard because you want to be with family, especially if it might be family members that you might have driven to for a long period of time, or you're staying at a hotel or staying in their house. But what you need to do is you need to remove the child from the situation. And it's, think about it. If you've got a lot of extended family, especially if you're at a wedding or something else, you don't want that child really spoiling the event for everybody else. So as much as you want to be there, if your child is not yet ready to handle that situation, you or your spouse have to be prepared to go outside and take your child outside and wait until your child has calmed down. Or if you have a stroller, it might take you a half hour to push them around and around the neighborhood until your child falls asleep, and then you're able to go back and enjoy it yourself. In extreme situations, it might even be that you have to take your child home because there's nothing going to calm them down, especially if you're like me, and I'm also very much enmeshed in a Middle Eastern culture. Our parties don't start until 9 o'clock at night, and the food is sometimes not out until 10 o'clock at night. And then the music gets going. And sometimes there are some children, especially 2 and 3-year-olds, who just can't handle going that late. The other thing you can also do is be proactive. So for example, when my daughter got married and I knew it was going to go until 1 o'clock in the morning, I hired a 12-year-old girl who joined us at the wedding. And then I said, and when my granddaughter, my other granddaughter, needed to go to sleep, if you're okay, I need you, I'm going to take you back up to the hotel room, and you're going to go stay with her in the hotel room and babysit her. So I know we all like to show off our little kids, especially because we work so hard getting them into the cute little outfits. Show them off, and then when they've had enough, you have to read their body language and take them out so that you don't spoil it for everybody else. I hope that I've answered those questions. I don't see any more right now, so I'm going to go back to the next slide if that's okay, but make sure that you type in your questions, especially if I haven't answered them all completely. So now we're going to really quickly go into the 3-year-old. So a 3-year-old is actually, I think, one of the funnest ages, because here is where, if you've done the first couple of years really correctly, here is where they love to socialize and play, and you can play games with them. And they also start to have a really cool sense of humor, and they giggle. And hopefully by now they've been potty trained. And you can take them to see people, and they can stay up later. And a 3-year-old might even understand that tonight you're going to stay up late, but every other night you have an earlier bedtime. They love to run and jump and be active. They speak very clearly, and this is also the age at which they need to start playing with peers in a more formal setting. So children actually don't need preschool until they are 3. But by the time they hit 3, if they don't have peers or, cousins and siblings and other such things to play with, if you're not able to take them to the park very regularly to play with other children, then this is the age at which they need more formal care or preschool, at least for 2 or 3 hours a day. And the reason for that is because between the age of 3 and 4, a child starts to understand their place in a social setting. So at 1 and 2, they understand their place in their immediate family setting. And then by 3, they start to understand where they belong in the greater world. And what they'll do now at 3 is they will also start understanding their role. So if they see mommy cooking in the kitchen or daddy cooking in the kitchen, they will start pretending to be mommy or daddy in the kitchen cooking. And if they see, and I don't have a doll in front of me, but if they see other people holding babies, they might take the baby doll and do this and hold the baby doll. And we call that anticipatory socialization. They are starting to anticipate what their role will be in life when they are adults. So you also might see girls starting to look at other girls and wanting a dress, or they'll ask, I want something that my girlfriend has in the class. Or if they're boys and they see something that daddy does, or daddy goes to work, or mommy goes to work. They might say, I'm going to work, and they'll put a purse or a bag on their shoulder. They might like to wear high heels like mommy does. And I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and I will tell you that one of my sons loved to wear my high heels. And the reason wasn't because he was gay. As a matter of fact, he's in a very long-term, very loving relationship with a woman right now. And I'm expecting him to propose to her very soon. But the reason why is because they have to try on, so to speak, the different gender roles and see which one feels right for them. And by wearing my high heels did not mean that he was going to be something other than who he was supposed to be. It's just, oh, mommy wears high heels. Let me see how this feels. But that's not for me. And now as a almost 23-year-old man, I don't think he's ever worn high heels since. But if he did, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But it's important that they have access to materials where they can at least try to have specific things that will acculturate them to who they are supposed to be. So if mommy wears a burqa, for example, they will try and put on the burqas. If daddy or mommy go jogging, this is the age at which they're going to want to follow you to do exercise and work out with you. It's also one of the best times to try new foods. And I want to say one thing about food. Your child between birth and 2 is going to eat a lot. And all of a sudden between 2 and 3, and especially between 3 and 4, they are going to lose some of that appetite because your child will do about half of their height development only until they're about 2.5 years old. So that if they're going to be a 6-foot tall man, they're going to be 3 feet tall by the time they're 2.5 years old. Think about that. The other thing you have to understand too is that for you as well, your brain consumes about 30% of the sugar you eat a day just to operate. And so children between birth and 3 years old need a lot of carbs. Not sugar, not white sugar, but carbs, good complex carbs like brown rice and pastas, a lot of fruits and vegetables, things that have sugars in them in order to keep the brain operating, especially because they're learning so much and doing so much that it's important that they have enough fuel in order to create those brain systems going. The other thing to watch out for at this age is that by the time a child is 3, they should speak clearly with at least 3, 4, 5 words in a sentence. And if they can't, this is the age to start looking into perhaps getting a speech assessment because our speech is what acclimates us to the world and gives us the ability to share information with one another. So if a child does not speak clearly, even if they're learning more than one language, as a matter of fact, for those of you that speak more than one language, make sure that you teach the children all of those languages from birth. It's one of the best times to do that. I'm going to stop this slide again and see questions. Oh boy, here are the questions. Okay, Tamar, let's see. I have tried to potty train my 3.5-year-old a lot, but no luck. Okay, so Vishal, it's a great question. First of all, and I'm not going to bash you, because if you don't have a book like this on how to raise a child, I don't even know that I've ever found the right book. The ideal time to potty train a child is actually between 18 and 36 months. So you are right at the cusp of it. First of all, you want to make sure that your child doesn't have any kind of physical issues. So for example, if a child is frequently constipated and it's painful, that might cause them to not want to be potty trained. Men more than women have an issue of only wanting to go potty in a certain toilet. It's a male brain thing. Some of you men or women who are married to men might know that there are men who only want to go potty at home. And so that might be something. It also might be that they're afraid of flushing toilets. But I will tell you, Vishal, this might be something that you and I can have a private Zoom meeting for, and if you want, you're more than welcome to email me and we can set up an appointment and I can have a little quickie Zoom with you. And I can help you go through some of the issues. I'm happy to do that with you. My 2.5-year-old child keeps crying if I don't give him what he wants. What can I do? I don't want to spoil him, but I also don't want him to cry. I know, crying is the worst, especially for those of us who can't handle the sound of crying. So first of all, I need you to know this. And so this is, once you start trying to break your child of the temper tantrums, they're going to get worse before you get rid of them. And the reason why is because your child has been trained to yell. So if you now say to yourself, that's it, I'm not going to let him cry, scream anymore and throw a temper tantrum, his temper tantrums are going to get worse until he realizes that this is not going to be the way I'm going to get what I want anymore. In fact, some children will even throw up because they scream so much that they throw up as a result of it. So you got to make sure that your child is safe at all times. So here's what you do, and I'm going to go more into this in one of my other Sunday lectures. I don't have enough time today, but here's what you have to do. First of all, you're always going to give your child everything they need. They have to get everything they need, not everything they want. And you've got to make that distinction. So if you know that they are fed and they are clothed and everything else, then make sure that they know that. However, different temper tantrums need different kinds of things. For example, my child doesn't want to go to sleep at night. You've got to handle a completely different way. And I wish I had enough time today, but I only have 15 minutes and it's literally one whole hour lecture I'm giving you guys. But there's a different temper tantrum where I want the lipstick. The short answer I can give you is when your child is having a temper tantrum, I want you to walk away if they're old enough, and walk away. And most children, if they're having that upstairs temper tantrum, remember, that's the one where as soon as I get what I want, I will stop screaming. If you walk away and close the door, especially if there's somebody else in the room who can make sure the child is safe, you will most often see children stop screaming, follow you, and wherever you are, start screaming again. That's how you know it's the upstairs one. But the walk away. And if not, if you can't walk away or it's not safe to walk away, maybe you're driving, simply stop the car and step out of the car. Even if they cry to the point of falling asleep, you have to nip that in the bud or they will always have that. But, you know, it's a touchy subject. Let me see if I can get through the other questions and then I'm going to come back to it if I have time. How to start potty training for a 3-year-old boy. He didn't listen to me. Any good strategies or advice? Okay, for potty training, the other thing I want to point out is I'm a very big believer in rewards. So for example, when I was potty training all of my children, I would give them the little box of like candy or M&Ms or something, and you can only have that while you're sitting on the potty. So it would be 2 M&Ms every time they sit on the potty. Don't make a big deal, don't yell and scream. And then I would also sometimes put them in front of the TV, because here's the thing. When you're potty training a child, I want you to describe, can anybody actually describe what it feels like to have to pee? I know what it feels like when I have a boo-boo, right? When I hurt myself on my arm, but what does it feel like when I have to pee? I can't describe it to a child. I can't explain it. It just has to happen. So what you want to do first is get them always to pee on the potty. Pooping happens much later. That's a stage later. But every 20 to 30 minutes, they have to sit on the potty, and they get those 2 M&Ms every time they sit down, giving them 1 at a time. And then now let's count. And we're going to count to maybe 10, and then you get another M&M. First, get them just to sit with the naked tushy, the naked butt, on the potty. And then once they're sitting there, get them to pee. Every time you go pee, take them to the potty with you, have their little potty right next to you, turn on the running water. You can also have them drinking, but make sure the bladder is full. You don't want to put them on the potty if their bladder isn't full. And then keep spoiling them and giving them, I totally give rewards for sitting on the potty, because once they're potty trained, it becomes rote memory, and you don't have to have the M&Ms or the candy anymore. But I would go with treats, and I hope that's going to help to start. My 2-year-old baby is such a picky eater. He doesn't want to eat anything unless it's pasta and a soup. Yes, absolutely. That's why I said that it's at 3 years old that you can start introducing new foods. When it comes to new foods, the rule in my house was you had to just say hello. It was called a hello bite. So you can have everything else you want. You can leave the table when you want. And I would even reward them with the M&Ms. Again, I believe in bribery in order to create something new in the brain. So it's an extrinsic, we call it an extrinsic motivator to become an intrinsically motivated action. So you just have to take a hello bite of the chicken, and then if you do, I will give you 1 M&M. Got it? And so I would start off with the hello bite. But again, I don't know that I have enough time to go into everything, but start there. I think that would probably work. But they are picky until they get to be about 3 years old. And we can't see the questions here. I don't know why you can't see the questions, but I see them. So feel free to type them. And, oh, I see. Yes, you have to click all panelists and attendees. Thanks. My 2.5-year-old child keeps crying if I don't give him what he wants. Oh, I did that. I have a child who is 3 years old. He doesn't speak too much. We're raising him up in a bilingual way. Should I visit a professional? Okay, if he's already 3 years old. So here are the things that you can look at for yourself, first of all. There are 2 parts of language, and then each one is broken down again. So the 2 parts of language are receptive and expressive. Receptive means that I can understand everything you're telling me. So first see if your child understands everything you're telling him. So for example, and at 3, they should already have this, put a shoe on one side of a room and the sock on the other side of the room, and show the child, there's the shoe and there's the sock. Will you please go get me the shoe? And if he understands what you're saying, or if you say things like, do you want dinner now? And he says yes, or he says no, but he's answering appropriately, and you know that his receptive language is okay, great, that part isn't broken. For his expressive language is your ability to answer or talk. So expressive language is also broken into 2 parts. One is the motoric thing. The motoric is the actual ability of your mouth and your jaw and your tongue to pronounce the words. And the other one is your brain's ability to find the answer to a question, and then it comes out and you say it. So if he says it, and he can say it and the words come out and he just doesn't say a lot, but it's clear, then it might simply be shyness. But if you worry about any of those things that I just said, then yes. And I'll tell you why you need to run to the professional. Between 0 to 3, and then 0 to 4, and then 0 to 5, each one, remember, is the foundational part of that structural memory. So if, for example, you were to get him speech therapy when he's 7, but his structural memory is such that I don't speak a lot, even if he learns how to speak, he might never speak a lot because his structural memory is such that I'm a person who doesn't speak, or people don't understand me. So remember, autonomy versus shame and doubt. I wasn't very good at speaking, so now I'm shameful of my speaking. So that's why I think Bright Start and this great organization is doing all of these lectures, is to make you aware of what real child development is supposed to look like, and then to get help when it's not looking like that. So yes, if any of these things ring or hold true for you and your child, I would definitely seek out even just an initial consultation. Maybe the consultation will say there's nothing wrong. Great, at least now you're secure in knowing that your child is developing appropriately, but better to be safe than sorry, as we say. Let's see, isn't it better to give healthier rewards? If your child will take the healthier rewards, go for it. We were a very healthy family anyways, so carrots, celery, things like that were never a bribery for my children. The M&Ms were the bribery. And, you know, here's the thing as well. I am an incredibly healthy person. I only drink water. My children never even had juice at home. And once they hit 4 years old, we didn't have milk. We are mostly vegan as adults. But life is, you know, life is all about those little moments of really sweet things. And so whatever works in your family, make it work for you. In my family, it was M&Ms. And I'm also going to admit to you that while I'm teaching a parenting lecture, none of us are perfect parents. So my failure as a parent, there were many, and I'll go through them probably in subsequent weeks, but one of my failures was, for lack of a better bribery issue, it was M&Ms. And do you give one-on-one lessons? Yes, I do. I'm going to probably have to ask the people who hired me today if they have any parameters beforehand, but Miriam, feel free to email and reach out. And I'm happy to do really quickie, or maybe we'll even do, if you have other kinds of questions, we could even do different kinds of topics and maybe go on and do more sessions than what I've had. But my goal is actually that once, and hopefully you'll join me for these other sessions, that if you do, that you'll have a lot of answers. And again, a lot of answers to some of these questions are also on my YouTube channel. And my YouTube videos are no longer than 5 minutes a video. So you might even get some answers over there. So I have a little bit of time, if you're okay. I'm going to go back to my next slide. And I think I can get that one done today as well. And this is your 4-year-old. 4-year-olds, these are people. Now they're real people. 4-year-olds start to understand everything, like who I am and what my gender role is, and they understand time, and they can dress themselves and feed themselves. They have the best sense of humor. They love jokes and they love rhymes, and they love to learn. This is where they start asking all of the WH questions. Why, where, when, what? This is where all of that foundation that you've created, you now see the rewards, because your 4-year-old now is that child that you can take almost anywhere. They'll understand even that I don't like kissing grandma. She wears too strong perfume, but I also know that I have to give her a quick kiss because that's respectful. It's just really cool stuff that happens at this age. The flip side with a 4-year-old as well is that they also think that they are too capable. And so you still have to keep an eye or at least an ear on them. This is also the age at which they start becoming gender curious. And I don't mean in a sexual way, but this is where they start understanding that the plumbing is different for different people. And we call it curiosity-seeking behavior. So if you are a more conservative family, just keep an eye open for them, because this is where they can get into trouble. I'm speaking euphemistically, but they can get into trouble if left out of earshot for too long a period of time. It is also a time where these children will be the most curious about foods. It's a great time to really teach children how to start cooking. I know that sounds crazy, but they can crack eggs open, they can add flour, they can add water, they can add oil, and you can help them learn how to knead and make bread. And you can have them with a very careful hand, teach them how to roll sushi, and teach them how to cut vegetables for that soup they love. And it is also the time that I would say take them to the store with you. And especially if you've had picky eaters, tell them that we're gonna take a hello bite tonight of a new vegetable or a new fruit. I'm gonna let you pick out the one that we've never tried before, and you're gonna be the one to come and help me pick it. Or if they always eat pasta, we're gonna buy a different colored pasta today. And you know, hopefully you have access to bean pasta, or they make rice pasta, black bean pasta, or maybe we're gonna try a different sauce on the pasta today. So a great time to just have your child start learning how to do different things. And then I've got, let's see, I sense my 5-year-old son is a bit traumatized from homeschooling since March. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna use the last few minutes if I can. If there's other questions, feel free, but about the pandemic. So, you know, again, everything that happens in life is going to leave a structural memory on our children. And I'm also a preschool. I run a preschool with 350 kids, both typical and special needs children, atypically developing in our school. And one of the hardest things for us is understanding that we are going to have to deal with really post-traumatic stress disorder. These kids have missed a huge window of development. So what I'd like to offer you, especially for those of you that have the ability, is find 3 or 4 other families that you're comfortable with. Tell them to, you know, if they've been isolated already for the 2 weeks, for the 14-day period, to do so. And then if you can, create a bubble. And what I mean by a bubble is that you sign a pact that your 4 or 5 families won't go out into big malls or travel, you know, to Tahiti or do crazy things that might get them COVID. But you create, we call it a quarantine, and that you can quarantine together so that these children have other children to socialize with at a critical period of development where they need children their own age. The same way we need adults, but we're okay doing it on Zoom because we understand. But that these children need to have some other children to play with in order to learn how to take turns and share, especially if it's an only child or the only other child at home is very different in age. If that's not possible, then you're going to have to do those children things with them and pretend you're a 5-year-old. So play games with them, sometimes win, sometimes lose. Make sure that you go out into nature a lot. There is something very healing about being in nature. So go out into nature, into trees and rain and forests and sand and ocean as much as possible for that therapeutic element. And then really quickly, what can I answer my 4-year-old? How bring me out of your, how did you come out of my tummy? So that's going to be a little bit trickier. I always answer it with this. How do you think it happened? You know, it's a good question, and let's talk about it. Always give answers in staccato, very short. So you can say, I went to the doctor. And then if that's not enough, say, well, I went to the doctor and it's a little bit like an operation. And none of this is lies. You don't want to lie to your child, but at the same time, you only want to do it in short bursts because your child might not need more than any one of those answers. And then how did they do it? Well, the doctor, it hurt a little bit, so the doctor gave me some medicine so it wouldn't hurt. And keep going that way unless they need more and more. And then I think you're going to have a conversation with your husband and then figure out how you want to discuss that. Let's see, we have a raised hand. Would you like us to give the floor to the person? I don't know what that means, but does that mean they're going to say it out loud? Yes, if somebody wants to ask me a question out loud, great. And am I giving any other seminars? Well, I think I'm doing this every Sunday for the next few weeks, and how to react with their fear when we need to see a specialist. Oh, anxiety. Ooh, the quick answer for anxiety is anytime your whole family changes a behavior as a result of the child. So for example, we're not going to walk that way because there's a dog down that street, so we're going to walk another way. That is one of the touch points to know that you might need to go see a specialist for anxiety when your family does something different as a result of one child. They can speak, you just need to unmute. Unmute your microphone. Let's see, I need to unmute the microphone. Okay, ask to unmute. I don't know. Krishna, I think you need to unmute yourself if you know how to do that. Okay, for those of you raising hands, I don't know how to unmute. It's not letting me unmute you. So if you want to talk, you need to unmute yourself. Oh, okay. Okay. Ask your question. I'm ready.
Hi, how are you? Please, I want to ask you about autism students. How to treat with them and not have any language and has like 3 years and do not have any language for them. How to treat with them?
You know, that's a very good question. My youngest child has autism and did not speak until he was 2.5. And I went to speech therapy. But you need to find a speech therapist who specializes in children with autism. And I'm not from your area, so I can't recommend anybody. And I'm, you know, maybe somebody on here has, but I would say send me an email, and because I won't know how to contact you. And let me see if my contacts in your area will know how to refer you. But make sure you tell me what area you're from so I can try and help you. I know that there's, what?
And also behavior have a lot of behavior is bad, like he turn around and around, he put her hand, he do something
Called stimming, yes. The spinning and flicking lights on and off.
spinning.
Yes, it's called stimming. My son did that as well. It's something that autistic children do. And for that, I'm going to type this on the bottom, if that's okay. But I did something called, I'll tell you what I did, applied behavior analysis. This was the treatment I did with my son. It's ABA for short. The man who invented it is Dr. Lovas from UCLA, which is where I teach. And it was like a miracle. But I will share with you that my son did therapy 80 hours a week for 3.5 years. And now he is 20 years old. He also has a girlfriend that he wants to marry. He is in his last year of university and he's a software developer. So it is possible to get them help, but it's a lot of therapy. I don't want to, you know, make it sugar-coated. It's a lot of therapy because if the autistic brain wants to go this way, the therapist has to be with them all the time to make the brain go this way. And so that's why we had so much therapy every week. The other thing you need besides speech and ABA is you'll also need occupational therapy. And the occupational therapy will help with the stimming. And I've had dozens, if not hundreds, of autistic children in our preschool, and they all are thriving, but you need to get the right kind of help.
يعني
So
that is meaning I need occupational therapy and ABE training and also yes.
and
طب
speech.
طب
Yeah.
طب I يعني ما شاء الله your son is so nice is learn يعني when my son is big is learn or he still not wanted to learn because he active boy he active and he
Yes.
not wanted to sit and he not wanted to learn something new. He
Um,
learn when
you know, I don't know your area. My son went to a special school for 3 years. And there was a therapist with him in school that taught him how to sit, how to learn. I mean, he had to learn everything. But this is what I do for a living, so I knew what he needed. But I'm telling you now, you have to throw everything at him right now while he's still young, and while you can still create that very strong foundational structural memory where you can really still try to shape the brain. You still are in a good window of time, but it needs to be a lot right now. And I don't know if you're, like, I know in California, our government helped me pay for it. I mean, it's a lot of therapy, it's expensive, but that's what needs to happen.
yeah.
So if you'd like, also send me an email, and I will find out and tell me what area you're in, and I will see if I can find out or help you how to get the right help. But there's also the autism track. Maybe people on there are more familiar with your area than I am. But this is what you need. You need occupational therapy, speech therapy, and you need applied behavior analysis if they do it in your area.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Good
Thank you
question.
for support.
Yep.
You support us so much.
Oh, well, my goal is to make a better world, right? And if these kids are going to be the future adults, we all have to make sure they're all as productive and as appropriate and as happy as possible. All right, well, I think our time has come to an end. I think I'm already going over time. I don't know. But I am going to be back next Sunday. I'm continuing every lecture. We'll build on the next. So I will be back next Sunday. I appreciate all of you who took time out from your Sunday night to join me. And again, looking forward to seeing many of you back here next Sunday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Sana.